adding one or more of these 5 common foods that are backed by scientific research will improve your diet, boost your nutrition, and lead to better health outcomes. I won't make you wait. The 5 foods to add are any vegetables you like, your favorite fruit, any variety of legume, any and all seafood and nuts or seeds, or both. Sound too simple? Let's dive into the science behind each of these foods, their respective health benefits, and how much of them we should be aiming for. I promise you'll see why this straightforward advice is so valuable. I'll even wrap up with how much benefit we can expect if we eat all of them. The metric we're using to determine which foods are the most beneficial to add to our diets is all-cause mortality, a general indicator of health and longevity. All-cause mortality is used in scientific studies to assess whether or not something is overall good for us or bad for us. It's used to evaluate the health impact of patterns of behavior, such as eating a specific food, exercising a certain amount, or smoking. Social determinants of health, such as education, race and ethnicity, or zip code. Environmental exposures, such as polluted air or drinking water. And biological factors, like genetics, vitamin D status, or age. While there's a lot of variability, we can say that very roughly, a 10% decrease in all-cause mortality on average translates to about a year of extra life. Importantly, all-cause mortality does not establish causality, but rather a statistical link. So these data must necessarily be followed up with mechanistic studies, cell culture studies, or animal experiments that look at the causal biochemical pathways, and/or intervention studies like randomized control clinical trials. These other studies are what establish causality. The good news is that for each one of the 5 foods that I'm about to cover, we know exactly what nutrients those foods contain that are responsible for the health benefits. So causality, check. Up first is vegetables. Vegetables are a rich source of diverse fiber types, a vast array of phytonutrients. Vitamin C, vitamin K, manganese, and copper. Many are also great sources of B vitamins, especially vitamin B1, vitamin B5, vitamin B6, biotin, and folate, and are good sources of potassium or magnesium. There's huge benefits to be had from eating more vegetables. Let's look at how much benefit from how many servings. A 2014 meta-analysis showed that just 3 servings of vegetables per day reduced all-cause mortality risk by 25%. A 2017 meta-analysis showed that 600 grams of vegetables daily, which translates to 5 or 6 servings, reduced all-cause mortality risk by 25%, cardiovascular disease risk by 28%, and cancer risk by 12%. And a 2022 meta-analysis showed that consuming 4 or 5 servings of vegetables per day reduced the risk of stroke, ischemic heart disease, and type 2 diabetes, all by 23% or more. That's right, these studies don't agree on how many servings of vegetables each day is optimal, but the preponderance of evidence supports aiming for 5 or more servings of vegetables per day. A serving of vegetables is 1 cup measured chopped and raw, and 2 cups for raw leafy vegetables. Most vegetables shrink to about half a cup once cooked, and you don't need to weigh or measure your veggies. Approximations are just fine. And a handy approximation, pun intended, is that a cup is about the same volume as your fist. If eating 5 or more servings of veggies every single day is intimidating, you are not alone. In fact, the average vegetable consumption in America is 1.6 cups per day, just over 1.5 servings. What's important to know is that every bit counts. You'll actually get way more health bang for your vegetable eating buck going from 0 servings of vegetables per day to any than you will from going from quite a lot of vegetables to even more. So it's totally okay to build up your vegetable consumption over time. And if 3 servings of vegetables per day feels more manageable, there is science to support that as a goal. I know you're gonna ask, yes, tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, okra, avocados, all count as vegetables. In nutritional sciences, we use the culinary definitions of what is a fruit versus what is a vegetable. For example, cucumber has much more in common nutritionally with a vegetable like celery than it does with a fruit like kiwi. And winter squash is much more nutritionally similar to a vegetable like sweet potatoes than to a fruit like peaches. So it makes vastly more sense to classify them as vegetables from a nutrition standpoint. And you don't need to overthink it. If we mainly use them in savory applications, even if botanically they're fruit, we count them as a vegetable. And if they're sweet, we count them as fruit, which are the second food group to add to support our overall health. Fruits are also rich in diverse fiber types and a vast array of phytonutrients in a way that is complementary to vegetables. They tend to be very high in vitamin C and copper, and also contain a good amount of B vitamins, especially vitamins B1, B2, B5, B6, biotin, and folate, plus vitamin K, manganese, magnesium, and potassium. And fruit is independently beneficial from veggies, so we're healthiest when we incorporate both into our regular diets. So let's look at how much benefit we can get from how many servings of fruit. A 2013 meta-analysis showed that consuming just 4 grams per day from whole fruit, which translates to 1 or 2 servings, reduced risk of coronary heart disease by 8% and cardiovascular disease by 4%. A 2017 meta-analysis showed that consuming between 250 and 300 grams of fruit per day, which translates to about 2 servings, reduced risk of all-cause mortality by 10%, but there was no additional benefit above that amount. And a huge 2018 review concluded that eating 2 or 3 servings of fruit per day was optimal for reducing risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, chronic constipation, and inflammatory bowel disease. The preponderance of evidence suggests it's best to aim for 2 or 3 servings of fruit per day. A serving is 1 cup measured raw for fruit, chopped if it's something like a melon or a mango, whole if it's something like a berry. That translates to 1 medium fruit, like 1 medium apple or 1 medium orange, or 2 small fruit, like 2 kiwi or 2 mandarins. And most fruit shrink to about half a cup once cooked. I'm looking at you, applesauce. The third food to add for our overall health is legumes. Legumes like lentils, chickpeas, beans of all kinds, and soy products are great sources of fiber. Vitamin B1, vitamin B2, vitamin B6, biotin, folate, copper, iron, magnesium, manganese, phosphorus, potassium, selenium, and zinc. They also contain a good amount of protein and are typically high in polyphenols. So let's look at how much benefit we can expect from how many servings of legumes. In a 2011 study, eating 2.5 servings of legumes per week compared to 2 servings or fewer per month reduced risk of all-cause mortality by 17% and reduced cardiovascular disease risk by 14%. A 2001 study showed that eating legumes 4 times per week, compared to once per week or less often, reduced risk of coronary heart disease by 22% and risk of cardiovascular disease by 11%. And a 2014 meta-analysis showed that eating legumes 4 times per week, compared to rarely eating them, reduces coronary heart disease risk by 14%. All in all, even a serving or 2 per week of legumes, like black beans, lentils, chickpeas, or tofu, is going to yield a health benefit. But the preponderance of evidence suggests it's best to aim for 4 or more servings per week. And of course, the benefits of legumes don't cap out until at least 1.5 servings per day. So really, you can eat as much legumes as you like. A serving of whole pulse-type legumes is half a cup cooked, which is the equivalent of 1 ounce or about 1/5 of a cup for the raw dried version, like dried beans or lentils or mature soybeans. A serving for tofu, tempeh, or natto is a 1/4 cup. Our handy approximation is that that is about the same as a rounded palmful. Yeah, I'm never gonna get tired of saying handy approximation. That reminds me of a joke. What type of vegetable always gets jealous? A green bean. I hope that mom joke earned your subscribe. The 4th food to add to our diets for overall health is seafood, fish and shellfish. Seafood is our best source of long-chain omega-3 fatty acids by a mile. Fish is also a great source of vitamins B1, B2, B3, B6, B12, folate, and vitamin E, as well as zinc, phosphorus, magnesium, iron, copper, potassium, selenium. And ocean fish from cold waters are also a good source of vitamin A, vitamin D, and iodine. Shellfish are extremely rich sources of vitamin B12, copper, selenium, and zinc, while also providing impressive amounts of iron, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, manganese, iodine, vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin D. Fish and shellfish are typically, although not always, combined in scientific studies. So let's look at how much benefit we can get from how many servings. A 2021 meta-analysis showed that for every 20 grams of fish we eat daily, that's like 3/4 of an ounce, risk of cardiovascular disease mortality decreases by 4%. A 2019 meta-analysis showed that eating 100 grams of fish daily, that's just shy of 1 serving, risk of all-cause mortality decreases by 8%. And a 2017 meta-analysis showed that compared to little or no fish intake, modest fish consumption, which was 40 grams per day, or about 1.5 ounces, results in a 9% decrease in all-cause mortality. These studies make a compelling case for aiming for at least 3 servings of seafood per week and up to every meal. A serving of seafood is 4 ounces or 115 grams measured raw, which translates to 3 ounces once cooked. Or using our handy approximations, about the size of your palm. There's a lot of myths out there about seafood quality, but that's a topic for a future video. For now, just know that it doesn't matter if you choose wild or farmed, fresh, frozen, or canned. And the number 5 food to add to our diets to support our overall health: nuts, seeds, and peanuts. Nuts and seeds are some of the most nutritious, healthy fat sources out there. In addition to containing beneficial fats like alpha-linolenic acid and monounsaturated fats, they tend to be good sources of fiber and some of the best food sources of vitamin E. They're also usually good sources of copper, magnesium, manganese, vitamin B1, biotin, folate, polyphenols, and phytosterols, which help lower cholesterol. And when it comes to nuts, a little goes a long way. A 2016 meta-analysis showed that 1 ounce of nuts, seeds, and peanuts per day, that's 28 grams, reduced risk of all-cause mortality by 18%, coronary heart disease by 27%, stroke by 11%, cardiovascular disease by 25%, cancer by 20%, respiratory disease mortality by 21%, neurodegenerative disease mortality by 19%, infectious disease mortality by 36%, and kidney disease mortality by 34%. And a 2015 meta-analysis showed that 1 ounce of nuts, seeds, and peanuts per day was associated with a 27% reduction in all-cause mortality, along with a 39% reduction in cardiovascular disease mortality. And in this study, the highest nut and seed consumers had a 14% reduced risk of cancer mortality. It really doesn't take much to see a health benefit from eating nuts and seeds. Just 3 or 4 1-ounce servings per week are associated with huge benefits. 1 ounce, 28 grams of nuts and seeds translates to about a 1/4 cup. Using our handy approximations, that's about a level palmful. For nut and seed butters, it's 2 tablespoons. And a tablespoon can be approximated as the top segment of our thumbs. Importantly, more is not better when it comes to nuts and seeds. Benefits cap out at about 1 serving per day. Eating more vegetables, fruit, legumes, seafood, nuts, and seeds all reduce all-cause mortality risk. So does that mean if we meet those serving targets of all 5 of those foods that we'll live forever? Sadly, no, but it will extend our lifespan and healthy years of life. A 2022 study estimated that if we adopted a healthier diet at age 20, which was defined as eating more vegetables, fruit, legumes, seafood, whole grains, and nuts and seeds, while reducing intake of ultra-processed foods, that could add 11 years to the lifespan of females and 13 years to the lifespan of males. The same study showed that making these healthy changes at age 60 could still add 8 years to our lifespan. And making these same changes at age 80 could still add nearly 3.5 years to our life. So it's never too late to benefit from making healthy changes and adding these 5 foods to our diets.